Morning. Welcome to the Santa Lucia Highlands. I'm Gary Franscioni, third generation grower here on the same property since 1886. My family came here. But it's only been since 1996 that we planted these vines right here. We're very fortunate to be near the Monterey Bay area, which gives us a cool climate. As you can see, we have a beautiful foggy morning. It's 8 a.m. here in California, and this is typical. About 10 o'clock at night, the fog rolls in and into our appellation, which I said was 15 miles from Monterey Bay, and it stays till 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and it burns off and goes back to the bay. This is what gives us a nice, cool growing season for growing Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. This is typical from April through mid-August, and then we have a really nice, slow developing wet type of weather that is more like Indian summer pattern, and it allows us to have a cool and a long ripening season in September and October is when we'll harvest these. We are a family business. You'll talk to my two sons here shortly, and they'll talk a little bit about the winemaking. But since I live on the vineyard, we make our own decisions. We're here every day, and we work in the vineyard at all times. So what we're going to look at this morning is what's called a double cross-arm system, and it's a trellis system that has several sets of wires. And we are just about at the time of working with these wires now. And so what we're going to do here, I'm going to do a little explanation. And there's a reason why we do this, and I will explain that shortly. But it takes a lot of hand labor to get these things going right at the start. And I'm just a couple days early, but we're going to separate every shoot. And let me put my clippers away right now, so that we're going to take out, we will remove any kind of doubles that are in the way. As you can see, these little clusters are future grapes. They have not flowered yet, which is coming in May, and they have not set yet, which is coming in June. But we're not afraid to remove those, and so that we have not an overabundance of crop, and our crop is well balanced, which means there's more concentration in our wines, and we want lots of air flow, and sunlight is one of the reasons that we're doing this trellis system. We believe it gives us more phenolics, and it gives us less chance of botrytis, which nobody wants botrytis in their grapes or wine. We won't allow that to go to the wineries. And they're just a little bit short, but if you can get the idea that what we're doing is opening this canopy so that there's a pattern of light that comes through the center of the canopy. In some of the trellis systems, we don't have 100% of this system in place. We are slowly every year adding on, as it truly costs us about $1,500 an acre more just to set this trellis system up versus our older trellis system, which is the VSP. And the VSP literally doesn't have these 4 catch wires, and it just brings them all together. So it's tighter. You don't get the sunlight or the airflow for less botrytis, and you get more even ripening fruit by the time harvest rolls around. So as we do this over time, every shoot has to be handled, as you can see. And then after we do the first set of wires, we'll be doing the second set of wires in another, it depends how fast they grow, 3-4 weeks. And then it becomes beneficial. And these tendrils eventually tie onto these wires too, so it's kind of cool. And if we have have some kind of, if we need more, depending on when, we'll come through and tie these with tape so that there's less movement and the shoots go straight up as they're supposed to be. I'm going to do a vine here and hopefully give you a look at what this thing looks like. So, Nick, maybe if you can take a shot, or maybe coming that way. You can see the pattern developing of openness, where sunlight comes in, air comes in, these little clusters. I'll take one off, I hate to, but these little cluster guys will get more sunlight and even ripening. And then once again, these shoots will go up through here and it'll be really nice and open. And that's what, it takes a lot of hand labor to do this and time, but that's what we believe gives us higher quality wines, the care that we put in the vineyards. You guys all have a great week. We're all going to get through this coronavirus. Nature doesn't stop. We have to be in the vineyard. We're lucky to be essential as nature just doesn't stop growing, so we can help grow the wines and take care of the vines that we touch every 12 days. We go through and touch every vine, tighten it up, and we'll be here in September harvesting, and hopefully we get some shots to you then. I'll turn it over to Adam, who's going to tell you a little bit about Roar.
Hi, so Roar Wine started in 2001 by my dad and mother. My brother and I have slowly come back into the fold of the winemaking and the farming process on both ends. We've both worked on both sides of production. And what I have with me here is 2018 Roar Chardonnay. This is Rosella's vineyard. But we farm Chardonnay on 3 different vineyards, and we use anywhere from 5 to 6 different clones. Our process of Chardonnay is obviously we start with it in the vineyard, and kind of everything my dad just explained as far as the hand labor and really the dedication to detail as far as farming the Chardonnay, because it can have a lot of botrytis in it. So we really do a lot of this trellising system. We do a lot of canopy management to keep down botrytis. We sort the grapes as we're harvesting, so that way we make sure we send no botrytis to the wineries or our winery. Once it gets to the winery, it's thrown into a press where it's very lightly pressed over 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours. And then that goes into a tank where we inoculate. We like to inoculate in the tank to make sure we get a good fermentation process going. And if we need to add any acid, it's very rare that we need to add acid. It's a very cool, as you can see the fog here. So when we're going about harvesting, we typically have really great acidity that matches with the sugar levels and the phenolics of the wines. So if we do add any bit of acid, we'll do that prior to adding the yeast. And then once we start to get a fermentation process going, once the juice starts to move about 5-degree Brix down, and we get a good amount of CO2 releasing from the juice, then we barrel the juice into barrel and let it ferment in there. We fill it about 45 gallons, so about 75% of the barrels filled, because the wine is hot and so it's expanding, so we don't want any overflowing or any microbes growing out in the air. Take about 35 to 40 days for it to ferment, and then we actually over vintage the shards. So we'll usually bottle in November, and we're typically harvesting here in beginning October, middle of October for the Chardonnay. We make 4 different shards. The Santa Lucia Highlands shard, the Appalachian blend, is the one that gets over to New York, and that's one of my favorite wines because we're using so many different clones to blend the wine together, and that adds a lot of complexity to it. So I'll hand over to Nick, and he can talk about the Pinot.
All right. So we have the Pinot Noir here, and we make 6 different Pinot Noirs. We have 5 different vineyards that we farm across. So we make a handful of single vineyards as well as an appellation wine. So for the Pinot Noir, in terms of the winemaking process of it, we start by, of course, picking in all by hand in the vineyard. So we do that in September and sometimes into October as well. And then once we have harvested it in the middle of the night, we'll bring it into the winery, nice fresh fruit, or we'll hand sort it on the table. So we'll run across literally every single cluster, and we'll have human eyes that are gonna look at that and pick out anything that we don't want to go into the fermentation. And then once it's done with the sorting, it'll go through to get destemmed. Usually we're 100% destemming. Sometimes we'll do a little bit of whole cluster addition, but for the most part, it's destemmed. It'll go into big tanks, big tanks. Usually about 5-ton tanks is mostly what we carry. We have a couple 3-ton tanks as well as a concrete tank. So we do some different sizes in terms of the fermentations. Mostly the 5-ton tanks are what we're carrying the wines in, though, or at least the fruit. So we'll put it in there. We'll cold soak it, usually a couple days. We'll let it kick off its fermentation natively. And then we'll override that with the preferred yeast that we've got. And we'll typically have the fermentation on the skins for about 3 to 4 weeks, just kind of depending on how that fermentation runs along. Usually on the cooler side of hot as well for running the fermentations. And then once that's done, we'll barrel it off. Once it's barreled, we'll then let the malolactic fermentation go natively. That'll happen usually about a month to 2 months after the primary is done. And then now is about the time when we start to blend this stuff. So we're pretty close to finalizing the blends. So just basically doing barrel selections of what are the different barrels that we like. And we do that across all of the wines, really. And so we choose the barrels that we like for each of the unique bottlings. And once that's done, we'll then finally put them to tank and then bottle them off in August, just before the harvest comes around for the next season. So it's about an 11-month process for the Pinot Noirs. It's very intensive, though, and each part of the life cycle of winemaking is really, really important. From the growing, from bud break, all the way till getting the wine in the glass to you. It's about a 2-year process. So it's a really, really, really long process, and it takes a lot of calculated decisions throughout that to make sure that we're going to make a fine quality product. And so it's very important that we're very hands-on. That's a very important measure of ours, is having a wonderful crew in the vineyards. We have about 30 to 40 crew workers who work with us throughout the entire year. And they're wonderful people. They're highly skilled. A lot of them have been working with us for a very long time. And so it's a very neat group that we have together, and a very highly attuned skill that we have in working with everything all the way from the vineyard all the way into the bottle. So it's a pretty exciting process, and we love what we do. We love Pinot Noir. It's the bulk of what Rohr produces, probably about 85 to 90% of what we grow and what we produce. We also do make, of course, the Chardonnay, which Adam had mentioned, and then very small lots of Viognier, Grenache, and Syrah, three varietals that we love to grow and drink, and ones that do happen to grow pretty well, even in a cool climate here. We have some specific spots for them with some certain soils, but nonetheless, we love all of the wines that we make. They're all super interesting, very fun. It's all highly ingrained in what we do and what we love, and I think that's what's really neat, is that this is a family operation. We're all a part of it. We all make all the decisions throughout the entire process, and I think that's what makes it unique and fun, but also can stress us out and choke each other from time to time as well. So it's pretty cool that we have such a close-knit family to go through that entire process, and to make the wines that we love to drink, and hopefully that consumers love to drink as well. And that's the sum of what I have for the Pinot Noir. The Santa Lucia Highlands, I think, also is a wonderful place for growing these varietals. It's very unique. There's a certain style to Santa Lucia Highlands. So if you've tried the wines from the Santa Lucia Highlands, you would know that Rohr certainly fits into that profile. We, I think, have our own unique style as well that goes with that. And I always encourage people that you have to really try the wines to know them. You can't just read tasting notes or hear it from someone else. You really have to try the wines, and so I highly encourage everyone to get a bottle, get a glass, and get it in front of you and give it a taste, because it's really important to know it. And I do promise you these are very distinctive wines. The moment that you do try them, you will certainly know that exactly where that's coming from and who it was produced by. I think they're very distinctive, they're very unique, they're very flavorful, they're fruit forward. They're enjoyable, and they age really, really well, and they build complexities over time. And I think we have a really good regimen program that my dad and mom have built over the course of the last 20 years to get it to where it is, and to continue to make beautiful wines every single year, and react to how each vintage and what that brings for us in the vineyard, and try to bring out the best expression that we can with each of the bottles. So that's my little spiel, and I think we've covered it all between the three of us, between Adam, Gary, and I. We run the brand, and we love it, and we love the wine growing aspect. We love making the wine, and it's very much who we are and what we do, and I don't think we'll ever stop. So thank you for listening to us, and hope you get a glass in front of you soon. And from all of us at Aurora, we thank you and T. Edwards for the great partnership, and look forward to staying strong through this year, and